Latitude, Battalion 3. Fill out the box. Dispatch, fill out the box. Dispatch, Latitude. Latitude on Route 21. I have a fully involved roof fire of a commercial factory at this time. We are not in position. We're going to loop around.
Hello and welcome back to this episode of 5 Alarm Task Force. If you're listening to the audio, if you're listening to the video and watching the video, welcome to this episode. This is kind of a special episode. I'm your host, Steve Green. It's a special episode because it's really basically almost breaking news. Many of you may remember that just 2 weeks ago, there was a massive 11 plus fire alarm in Passaic, New Jersey. And as it turns out, a good friend of mine that I met through the Great Florida Fire School back in 2017, Battalion Chief John Hayowyk, was, not only did he respond, was he on duty that night as the battalion chief for that area, but also Captain James Kovacs was on Engine 1 and responded as well. And they're both with us today for this interview to talk about this massive fire. John A. Hayowyk Jr. has been in the fire service for over 29 years. He is the battalion chief for the city of Passaic Fire Department in New Jersey. Passaic is a small city about 10 miles west of New York City. It is 3.2 square miles with a population around 100,000, and it's a great little community. I lived right outside of it and was there often. John is also a New Jersey certified level 2 fire service instructor, inspector, and fire investigator. He heads up the training division for the Roxbury Township Volunteer Fire Department. He is the owner of Beyond the Basics Fire Training and Consulting and part of the Thin Red Line radio show podcast. The chief has recently presented classes at several conferences, local and around the U.S., and he will be teaching at the Orlando Fire Conference and the North Florida Fire Expo later this month and into next month. Captain James Kovacs is a 24-year veteran of the fire service, serving as both a volunteer and a career firefighter. He holds a bachelor's degree in fire science from New Jersey City University. Captain Kovacs is currently assigned to Ladder Company 2 on Tour 3 for the Passaic, New Jersey Fire Department. He is also currently the Garfield, New Jersey fire official. He's a New Jersey certified level 2 instructor, fire investigator, fire official, and EMT. He served as the fire chief of the Garfield, New Jersey Volunteer Fire Department in 2011. Gentlemen, welcome to the podcast. It's an honor to have you with us today.
Steve, thank you for having us on.
Well, Chief, like I said in the intro, we've been friends for a long time, and I knew I had to reach out when I heard your voice initially on the news part of the newscast when it broke it, and then listening to the audio that Chief Billy was able to put out on the Firefighter Close Call. So let's start at the beginning. Who got the first? The dispatch sounded a little strange, as we talked about just before we started recording, that came in as a car fire was the initial alarm. So who wants to pick it up from there?
So I'll start it off.
Okay.
So, we dispatched for a car fire up on Route 21. Route 21 connects Route 80 down to Route 3 and dumps right into Newark. So we had a report of a car fire, and it's not too strange that we get car fires up there. But so they sent it. That's an East Side box. So the East Side companies, we send our ladder and an engine, and the battalion goes up as a safety. So I got the dispatch on that, and soon after, I guess I was just getting the door open to the apparatus bay to pull out. Dispatch says, "Hey, we might have a commercial structure fire," and then our ladder company got up on 21, and they said they had a large column, and then we were just sort of trying to figure out what we had and where it was. We were getting some conflicting reports of it was in the area of on the other side of the highway by our projects that we have on Columbia and Aspen. And then they were saying it was 220 Passaic Street, and we just kept getting into the area. And then with all the reports, we filled out the box, and Jimmy was assigned as the Engine 1 captain, and he was actually filling out the boxes in the third due engine. So with that, Jimmy was asking, where are we going? Because we still didn't have a location or anything else. And as we're responding in, we're still looking in the sky. I'm looking, I can't see. I've got some big buildings in front of me. and they said across from 220 Passaic Street, which is another large heavy timber building. And again, let me put it this way: there's probably about 10 buildings in the city that I really don't want to burn, and we actually burned one of them. So it's like 9 now, and maybe I'll find a 10th, but that's it. There's some stuff in that building that really had me concerned, and but we got on scene. The way it works is it's 2 Canal Street. It's all the way, drops down back to the Passaic River. It's 2 stories up front and drops down with the topography change to 3 stories in the rear. And we had like the truck captain said, truck lieutenant said, he said, we had a large column, and yeah, we had a large roof fire. I swear it had to be going 100 by 100, and it was going well. And had ember issues right off the bat. We had alarms activated, so we had a sprinkler flow. So we knew we had work, and transmitted the second, I believe, and the third alarms initially. Special called a tower ladder to the scene. But Jimmy, what did you see coming down? Because you came down what, Passaic Street?
Yeah. So actually, when the dispatch came in, I didn't think too much of it, Steve. It came in, like you said, as a reported car fire up on the highway, and I was upstairs in my office doing house reports. And I kind of didn't pay attention, really. Car fire, 2 company box. I wasn't going to go initially, so I wasn't too concerned. And I heard the urgency in the dispatcher's voice when he came across the radio to tell the battalion that I also had a report of a commercial structure fire. And you could hear the 911 phone going crazy in the background, multiple calls coming in. And that's when I kind of perked up a little bit and started to listen. But when the chief filled out the box, we were added to the assignment. And like I said, we pulled out of quarters. We took our normal response route to Passaic Avenue or Passaic Street going towards 2 Canal. And when we got to Passaic Street, like I said, we could see the column and we could see the glow in the air already. We had the orange glow in the distance, so I knew we were going to work. And we got down to Passaic Street, and the chief was already on scene. We ended up being second due because the initial engine company that was dispatched to the highway had a loop around, and they were delayed getting back to the scene. So I ended up taking a second due position, and from there I just started organizing a water supply to get the first due engine and the first due ladder fed, and away we went.
Let me ask this question, because you mentioned it close to the river. Were you close enough that you were able to draft for water?
So interesting enough, we have probably one 20-foot section of hard suction for the department. And that's sort of a training piece that we have set up aside. So none of our apparatus, none of our engines have drafting capabilities. We don't have hard suction or anything else. Some of our mutual aid, they absolutely do, but I don't believe that they weren't able to get into a position where we were to affect a draft. And the way Canal Street is, it's a one-way dead end back down to the river. So it's sort of a tighter street when you get towards where the fire building was. It's more open. Jimmy, what do you say? Just less than a quarter mile long from Passaic Street to the river?
Yeah, down when you get closest to the river, Steve, it opens up. It used to be a parking area for the business establishment and a turnaround for the tractor trailers. But the main driveway coming off of Passaic Street at its widest point is maybe 35 feet wide.
So the one thing that I'm really proud of our engine guys, the way they laid line, and again, that's why I wanted Jimmy on here. Jimmy was my water supply officer. I never called him that officially, but he did an amazing job of getting everybody set. And I know we're jumping ahead a little bit, but our first due engine coming in, they hit 2 dead hydrants coming in, and it's a complex. So sometimes you can trust the hydrants, sometimes you can't. And if you're listening to the radio, I got a hydrant here, and one of the reasons why I knew it was a city hydrant is because they converted to stores connections, 5-inch stores on the steamers. So that was my, hey, this is the last one we've got. And they came in, they nosed into it and got in a really good position. Our ladder 1 was coming in. Our ladder 1 is actually our ladder 3. We're using a spare. Little backstory on that. During Hurricane Ida or Tropical Storm Ida, we lost our tower ladder due to flooding. Our guys were effecting a rescue. They had a car that actually went around barriers and down into train trestle underpass and was floating. We had 3 people in there. They got they were able to get 2 out. The third one, they weren't able to because the car started floating away from them. And at that time, they realized that where the apparatus was, we've never had water that high. It actually came up into the cab. So our tower ladder has been out of service since, I believe it's September 1st. And we've been using the spare tiller that we purchased years ago from La Plata, Maryland. And that truck has seen so much work. I guess within its first 3 weeks being here, what is that, like 4 years ago now, Jimmy?
Yeah, at least. It had at least 3 or 4 multiple, I'm talking 4 and 5 alarm fires within the first month it was in service in the city.
And I nicknamed it the bad luck truck, because that truck catches so much work, and it's a staple. And the tiller that we have down at Eastside, our ladder 2, we had an issue with the nozzle. So the nozzle had to be removed, and it's plugged right now. So it doesn't have any water capability for aerial master stream. So that sort of factors into a lot of stuff, and bring that into. So we brought the uptown ladder 1 in to set up into a position to get water up onto the roof. So I knew we had the roof job going. Engine 3 came in and made the hydrant at the in that little parking area, and was feeding ladder 1. And then engine 4 made its way into the complex, and they backed in. I knew we were going to have some issues, so I started calling for a reverse lay, come in and drop out. And Jimmy really coordinated that because engine 2 was actually in front of him, because you hear Jimmy say, "I'm on Passaic Street. What's your orders?" And I'm like, "Get me water." And that was pretty much where we were at. So, Jimmy, how did you get 4's water?
So when we came down Passaic Street, 2 engine was just pulling onto Passaic Street, coming back from the highway, and engine 4 was actually staged at the entrance to the complex. Engine 4's officer, really good guy, but he's been promoted maybe a month, and we had an actor on engine 2. So I got out of my rig, and I just kind of, not that I took over, but I was trying to direct them and get direction going, what the chief needed. And I had engine 4 back into the scene, and my intention was for them to get, and they ultimately did, their master stream deck gun into service right away. And I told the engine 4 officer that I was going to back into him and then lay out to Passaic Street to pump to him. I ended up doing just that, but in the meantime, engine 2 pulled into the complex, and we ended up feeding engine 2, and they relayed to engine 4. At the height of the fire, I ended up getting 2 feeds into my apparatus, and I was able to feed engine 2, which was then feeding engine 4. And I believe they were supplying the East Rutherford Tower ladder that the chief special called. Additionally, we were feeding the Clifton ladder 3, which is a quint. We were feeding a portable deck gun, and we were feeding initially a QRV, a quick response vehicle, with 2 deck guns mounted on it. So we established water pretty early. And actually, the chief gets credit for that because he banged the 3rd alarm pretty quick, and that got resources to us pretty early on. From there on, everything that came in, I tried to do a reverse layout so we didn't clog up that driveway. As I said, it was pretty narrow. And we did a really excellent job keeping everything off the one side because my intention was to continue to bring tower ladders into that driveway to protect the exposure building. Sure. At one point when we set up the portable master stream, Steve, they had bales of cardboard, corrugated cardboard on the loading dock of the exposure, which the main fire building got hot enough and was letting off enough radiant heat that those bales started to off gas. And I knew that building contained chlorine. It was a pool supply type establishment that had plenty of probably like 50,000 pounds of chlorine in it. So my focus became that building and protecting that building at all costs. And I actually said to the chief, if you give me 2 more engines, we're going to dig in here and we're going to protect this corner. And he basically said, whatever you got to do, you got the green light, go ahead, arrange it. And we went from there.
So we didn't even talk about like the occupancy. So this is a 3-story mill building, Qualco. I call it Coastal Chemical. That's what I knew the other building as. They changed names, but still the same stuff. And they handle pool supplies. They handle a ton of other gaming things. They do furniture and stuff like that. And the original fire building was approximately almost 1.75 acres. I did a quick Google Earth when I'm doing my report that next morning, and I came up with I had to do it in acres. Square footage just didn't do it justice. So we were at 1.75 acres for that for the fire building, and allegedly we had about 2,000 pounds of chlorine, finished product, ready to go to be sent out in that building. And we were just flowing water. There was a 15-foot alleyway between the fire building and the exposure. I'm going to call it the A exposure because it was the front side of it. That building's a 3-acre building with, they said, 50 tons of chlorine. So that was really scary for us. It's scary for me. I'll say that. I'll put it right out there because I didn't want to lose that building. If we had fire in that building, it would have been a long, long time. We had a mass evacuations because downwind, it was going across the river into Wallington. Actually, if you listen to the radio, you hear I call about ember issues into Wallington, and Wallington's engine was coming mutual aid to us. And I can at least talk about our responses. So when we bang a second alarm, we get our additional 1-in-1 engine. So we're 4 engines, 2 ladders, and a battalion. And we were riding 20 that day, but from 3 o'clock in the afternoon to 2,300 hours, we assigned a dispatcher to cover our dispatch. So with that, I was down to 19. So I lost my driver. My driver actually was covering on engine 4. The dispatcher did an amazing job. Firefighter Milan, his first time with the working fire, and he said they had 60 calls within 30 seconds when the board lit up. And between police and fire, because it's a joint dispatch, they were just swamped with everything. One of the things I got lucky with, and I was able to rattle off that I knew this was a hazmat incident and start my hazmat response. There's always a reflex time, and I knew it was going to take a little while. I wasn't sure exactly who we were getting, whether we were going to get the county sheriff's hazmat team, where I was getting Clifton, which is our mutual aid. But again, when I bang my second alarm, we start out our mutual aid system. So we're getting 2 ladders. I believe it's 2 engines and 2 ladders coming in. Sometimes we've been changing stuff up with COVID. Our response package is coming in, but our third alarms, we're getting everything. We're getting an additional 2-in-1. And we just started escalating the alarms just due to the fact that we needed water supply. Like Jimmy said, hey, I need 2 more engines. And the nice part about it is we have some county coordinators. So City of Passaic is in Passaic County. We border Bergen County. Once we strike our second alarm, we're getting Bergen County units coming in. So we're getting Wallington coming in with an engine. We're getting East Rutherford with their ladder tower. So I knew with ladder 2 being wouldn't be able to flow any water, I special called the tower ladder. I fumbled on that a little bit trying to think who it was, but we got them in there. Those guys had a great supply. Wallington actually came in and dropped out. They dropped a portable 5-inch hydrant, which was amazing because we were able to start feeding a lot of other apparatus and stuff. And when Jimmy said, "Hey, Chief, we got the building starting to off gas in that front A exposure," I'm like, this isn't good. And it took a little while to get our water supply up. But we had our deck gun going, and we actually had to reposition ladder 1 because of where we were. It came down to about I'll say a 14-foot wide driveway, and where ladder was placed, it was underneath the power lines. So we had to sneak into a back parking lot, get underneath the power lines, and we were calling for public service electric and gas on a rush because my concern was the power lines coming down, and they had 3 large transformers right there. The radiant heat was pretty intense. We actually had one of our firefighters pulled the car line off of the engine 3 and was wetting down both the engine and the ladder because it started to steam. And I'm like, I can't lose an engine. I can't lose a ladder. Right. We're already down a ladder. We're using our spare. I can't lose that. And our guys did an amazing job. The amount of water, if you see the drone footage, we really concentrated on, I'll call it the A-B corner to try and keep that area from jumping to the A exposure. And, we put the multiversal down bottom. We had a blitz fire being fed down there just in that 15-foot alleyway. Jimmy, who else came in and helped feed for you guys?
So we got Patterson engine 3, also came in. I had them, again, reverse lay out to a good hydrant on Passaic Street. Wallington, as the chief said, dropped a portable hydrant in the driveway, which gave me a lot of flexibility. As the chief said, we had to reposition apparatus a couple of times. Clifton Engine 3, where I set them up, I actually had to reposition them because they once the building got going, and we had the exposure problem on the A side with the chlorine factory, I had to reposition them because they were in a bad spot. They ended up forcing entry to that building because we got a report early on that the radiant heat caused the windows in that 15-foot alleyway to crack. And at that point, the chief said, Jimmy, you got to feed the FDC, get it going. And my pump operator, I give him all the credit in the world, Cesar Reyes, good young kid, good young fireman, been on a job about 5 years, did an excellent job feeding multiple appliances and other apparatus, as well as the FDC. So hats off to him. But he got water into the system, and we actually started flowing. And then because of the threat of chlorine in the building and the potential for off-gassing, once we realized the fire had not yet entered the structure, we stopped that operation, stopped water flow into the building. The county coordinators, again, hats off to them. They were meeting me because of where I was positioned. I was at the main entrance to the complex. So everything kind of had to go through me at that point. And they were just instrumental in getting additional engine companies from Carlstadt, Patterson, as I said, Garfield, Rutherford, I believe. Rutherford Engine 3 came in. And we actually had problems with dead hydrants due to freezing. Hydrants were frozen at the intersection of Passaic and Market. And I believe there was one frozen on First Street. So a little bit into the incident, once we got going and I had the second and third alarm companies established with water, I knew we were overtaxing the water system. I made the recommendation over the air to our chief of department, actually, who was on scene at this point, that we needed to go into Bergen County. We needed to set up a relay operation and go over the bridge into Bergen County. And we were able to accomplish that. Also, with the fourth and fifth alarm companies that checked in with me at the entrance to the complex, I had them lay probably, what would you say, Chief, maybe a mile, all the way up Passaic Street going towards Main Avenue.
Yeah,
it was
we had three-quarters of a mile to a mile, absolutely.
We had a large main up on Main Avenue, so we just continued to relay, stretch out to that location. And again, hats off to everybody. They did a really great job that night. Wallington, just to interrupt you, Chief, Wallington actually was instrumental too. They sent a full box. They dispatched their entire department when the chief reported such an ember problem going across the river. Wallington actually had occupied buildings, that the smoke condition was so severe on their side of the river, they were getting inundated with fire alarm activations. So they did a great job with exposure protection on their side of the river.
Absolutely. And you know what? The chief of department, Chief Kovacs, came in. He got in probably about 30 to 35 minutes into the operation, and we met up where ladder 1 and engine 3 were operating. And we had a quick situation status report and reviewed what's up. And he said, listen, I'm going to take this, you go to ops. So with that really helped me, because I was now able to really dig in and start seeing all the different apparatus that we had on the Canal Street side.
Right.
So with everything else going on, we had the exposure on Route 21. Route 21 is that corridor where we thought we had the car fire. The chief set up our deputy. Our deputy was up on Route 21 with our training officer, and they actually had 4 tower ladders operating there. I believe they had 8 engines, and they had 2 water sources. State police shut down the highway for us in both directions. We actually laid 5-inch up and over the Jersey barrier, cut a fence to the corner of Columbia and Aspen, and they hit that hydrant. They laid another, it's got to be about a mile or so up from the on-ramp from where Burger King is on which street's that? It's Gregory.
Ave.
On Gregory and River, and laid up and fed. So we had some serious inline pumping going on. The chief of the department immediately called for our pump systems to be turned on and boosted to the maximum capability. We have I call it a water authority, Passaic Valley Water Commission, and they can turn on the pumps, boost them up a little bit for us if needed, if we had a major fire, and they did an amazing job. We actually had mutual aid as far as Essex County. Newark sent a 2-in-1 up to assist. And with all this, they had to backfill our stations too. So we had, at the height of it, probably 200 firefighters operating at one time. And then they continued to rotate through the next, I guess, 72 hours. And I know I'm jumping way ahead, but after Jimmy, I'm going to go back a little bit. After Jimmy repositioned Clifton Ladder 3, and Clifton, they did a beautiful job. They always do when they come in mutual aid. Their Ladder 3 guys are spot on. Their officers sharp, and their guys are willing to do anything. We actually went into the front building, went to the A exposure, and we were seeing what's going on. And we got in there, and I'm like, I got to smell of something burning. And that's what was really concerning us as we got back to we'll call it the C side of the A exposure. I'm like, man, that glass is really clear. And I put my hand through, and it melted. All the windows were melted out on that C side. That's a processing center. It looks like for where they put their containers of what they're going to sell for the finished product out. And we had a property manager with us. All of a sudden, he fires up a forklift, and he starts dragging product going backwards just to get it away from the open area. We had actually a sprinkler activation in a processing room that was tripped, and we let that flow for a little bit, but we came back and later on reassessed and shut that down due to the fact that we had potential for issues regarding the chlorine. When Jimmy called for it was off gassing the roof. I know I'm bouncing around a little bit, but we put water up onto that roof from Route 21 side as well as the Canal Street side. And we were able to quench it and cool it. Like Jimmy said, it was probably right around freezing at the beginning of the incident. I get us around like 2:30 in the morning, 3 o'clock. I finally got to sit in my the chief's car and try to put some information together so I could start to write the report. I looked down; it was 13 degrees, so everything was starting to ice up. We started this operation at 8 o'clock at night. It was a Friday, so we fuel up every Friday and every Monday. And the rule of thumb is anytime you drop down below 3/4, you get fuel no matter whatever day it is. But I knew everybody was topped off. Now we're starting to burn through fuel. So now we're trying to get our DPW to get in there with fuel for our apparatus. We actually had to shut down engine 3 for a little bit because we didn't want them to totally go empty, because that would have been more problems than it's worth. And we used them as just a giant appliance to continue to flow water to ladder 1 that was flowing on that corner. But our DPW came in. They did a great job. We actually had Bergen County. Their fuel truck came in. Clifton sent their DPW fuel truck came in. It was pretty wild. We actually had 3 water sources. We had the ones I'll call it on Route 21, the highway area that was operating. We had our Canal Street side, and then the water that came over the Market Street Bridge went into the back of, I believe it's one market or 2. I forget the number on it.
I believe that's one market.
Yes, and so we had a tower ladder from Wayne operating there, and in the Canal Street side, we had four aerial master streams going, multiversal, at least 2 to 3 blitz fires, another deck gun, and a hand line or 2 operating just to keep that fire in check. And you know what? Mother Nature was on our side that night. We had a wind from the north, which was blowing from the A to the C, which kept a lot of the radiant heat in the embers from going to that A side exposure. If things were different, I couldn't imagine what we would have been dealing with if we had that. Yeah. But with the chief of department there, he made a couple really, really awesome calls. We started a water supply task force. They called for boats to come up the river. Problem is, Passaic's a tidal river. So in the Passaic River, to where we are, it's based on the tide. So we had a slack tide, and it was we could only get boats so far. They called for Newark's boat, but it can't make it under some of the bridges that are fixed now. Years ago, they used to be able to swing or lift, right? And we couldn't get them up. We had two smaller boats make it up that way, but then they made the realization that they had a little bit of a chlorine odor, so we didn't want to contaminate them or put them into a spot So we never had anything on that seaside able to flow water. We did get the DEP in there to do air monitoring. Our mayor was pretty spot on. If anytime we get a fire, he's there. He's does a great job with communication. So he'll update the city as to what's going on. He does his Facebook Live. When he first became a chief mayor, he would walk up to the chief at a major incident, and the chief's like, "Whoa, I'm not used to this." And now we're a couple of years into it, and the chief would prompt the mayor as what was going on. And I know Bergen County. I think Jim, you can probably speak on that. They did like a defend in place, and they told everybody to close their windows downwind because of it. But we had our DEP and our EPA out, put air monitoring devices to make sure that everything was pretty safe.
Yeah, I believe with excuse me, Steve. I believe with Bergen County OEM and in coordination with Wallington Police, they were able to use something similar to reverse 911 and have the people remain indoors with their doors and windows closed because of the odor and the smoke condition in their jurisdiction.
Yeah, it's again, if we refer back to the video, at least that the video on the ground that the national news had, and you see the extent of that fire, how big it was. And I haven't seen the drone yet footage, but I'll look that up after we conclude this today. And now the challenge is that, it's by the river, but you really weren't able to use the river to your advantage. You have all this water, but because of the levels, and then the boats couldn't come in, you couldn't draft from it. Yet you managed through mutual aid to, under a real dangerous situation, especially coincidentally, we're doing this today on Tuesday, February 2nd. I didn't know what the groundhog found, but I might live in Florida since 1990, but I also served for 4 years in Syracuse, New York area. So I know what it's like on those cold nights, especially when we have had lake effect snow in Syracuse, and the wind chill was 35 below. I remember we had a house, a 3-story house that was cooking away when we just pulled up. It was, I guess same thing. It was about 2 miles away from the station, but pulled out, got on the main street, and there you could see the glow already in the sky, and you knew you were going to work. But the fact is that even with those conditions, you guys put the teams together. And I was going to ask about having lived in Livingston and knowing they've volunteered. I don't know if it's still volunteer, if they've gone to part pay, but when I heard that Essex County was called in, and then I heard, I think I heard that Livingston actually responded also, I think, but I didn't know how far into Essex, the call had gone out. But to have such an excellent connection with your neighboring departments and your neighboring counties, and to be able to know that when you call them, it's not, well, we'll see what we can do and stuff like that. They come in full force with the same head of steam that you guys are already working at to support you. And I think that's so important for us to have. And especially, yesterday, my guest was supposed to be Capt.James Kovacs from Champaign, Illinois, talking about his article in December Firehouse about fire ops at night, practicing fire operations at night. And I told him when we spoke yesterday to reschedule, he got recalled on a 13-hour overtime shift. But I said, when stuff like this happens, my idea is we did a few things at night. We had drills on Tuesday nights or Friday nights, but we never went into that real planning for ops at night. And one of my prior guests, Jimmy Partridge, was a former officer with DC Fire. And when he was on, he was telling the story that oftentimes he would, 9:30 at night, he'd rouse the crowd and said, "Okay, boy, let's go. We're going out. We're going to raise a stick." They said, "Hey, Lou, it's almost bedtime. What are you talking about?" And he goes, "Yeah, well, what happens if it's 3 o'clock in the morning, it's pouring rain, there's no power? You're going to be able to raise that stick and raise it carefully?" "Okay, Chief, we're on our way." And they went. So I think this, and you guys were operating totally in night ops. That's all you had.
And you know what? There's been, so once we got to that fifth alarm, the chief was making a lot of calls for, obviously we had rehab, we had EMS there. I'm going to miss an agency or I'm going to miss a town, definitely, because it was far reaching with our mutual aid coming in. But we set up our PD command post. So we had our command post set up. They brought in one of our, it's almost like a Winnebago, and they brought that in. They set that up. We had warming stations brought in. We had MAV units, right, Jimmy? What's the EMS unit called? Is it the MAV?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah. So it's a mobile ambulance, but it can be used as a warming station as well. Our rehab was great. We don't have a local rehab. We have a county rehab, and those guys and ladies did an amazing job. EMS was perfect. We had, I think we had one injury at the incident, which was able to be taken care of. And it was not really that significant, but it was enough, had to go to the hospital, had to get some stitches. But again, we had, the chief was making some really good calls on calling for the Neptune system. After 9/11.
Oh, hold on. You know what? That's a great place for a break.
Okay.
Because that's going to be major. So, folks, if you're watching the video, you're not going to see anything different. If you're listening to the audio, you know that we take a little break. We put in some of our public service announcements, and then we'll be right back with our guest, Battalion Chief John Hayowyk and Captain James Kovacs, right after these words. So please stay tuned. And welcome back to this episode of 5 Alarm Task Force. I'm your host, Steve Green. And with me, my guests are Battalion Chief John Hayowyk and Captain James Kovacs of the Passaic Fire Department. And we're talking about the 11-plus alarm fire at a chemical plant, a chlorine plant. And they made other pool supplies as well, as the chief mentioned, back just 2 weeks ago, this past weekend in Passaic. And we've been talking about the initial size up and what they kept finding and the extent of this fire on a building, as the chief mentioned, that he guesstimated was 1.75 acres, because if you talked in the square footage, nobody could imagine the size of it by giving you square footage. So he came up with looking at the size of it by 1 3/4 acres. So we're back, and we're going to be talking a little bit about what I mentioned towards the end of that first segment, which is about night ops. And Captain Childers is going to be coming back later this month to talk about his article in Firehouse. But I think, and I reached out to him because I noticed in my 8 years back in the late 70s and early 80s that while we did have most of our drills were at night when people weren't working, even though I was in a volunteer and combo department, we didn't do a lot of real drilling or real practice of night ops. And also, since my second department was up in Syracuse, New York area in Onondaga County, the cold, the weather plays a major role in this. So Cap, let's start with you and talk about both this coincidence that happened with cold weather with the department and then night ops as well.
So earlier that afternoon on the drill schedule was actually cold weather pump operations. So we currently have 3 firefighters that have less than 2 years on a job. So I brought everybody down, and I brought 2 of our senior pump operators down to the apparatus room. And we went over cold weather pump operations as far as circulating the pump, talking about utilizing WD-40 or even a little bit of antifreeze in the caps of the discharges so they don't freeze over and you're able to, screw them on and off easy. We talked about the use of road flares for defrosting storage connections and couplings, and even to defrost hydrants. And lo and behold, 4 hours later, we're doing it for real on the scene. So it's, strange how things work out.
Yep. And yes, and when you mentioned the flares, I remember that from up in Syracuse. We used road flares on the hydrant caps as well, and had to do it on some of our caps on the apparatus. When it's that cold and if it's moist and it's that cold, you're climbing up a very steep hill without any rope, without any spikes. You're just trying to climb that hill without it. And so you have to be ready for it.
Yeah, especially in our environment in the Northeast at this time of year, this is a real problem for us that we face anytime we get a fire in December, January, February. But the chief also alluded to the ladder companies as far as extending and retracting the sticks as we were flowing water because of the wind that night and the overspray. You had apparatus that were frozen over, and to prevent anything from getting stuck in position, he did a good job of directing all the truck operators to keep their sticks moving about to prevent freezing over. So,
right. And then
that's important, because last thing we want to do is get stuck in one position or cause more damage while we're there. But we were definitely making some ice castles with our overspray. We started to see that a lot on the power lines, which eventually the PS Electric came down and they cut it. They put 2 trucks in and cut the section out on Canal Street and totally killed power to that area, which is exactly what we needed, because we didn't want to have anything come down live. Sure. That would have hampered operations remarkably. Last thing we need is down power lines on apparatus or anybody having to step over. We had a lot of things going on that early couple, I'd say this 3rd, 4th, and 5th alarms. We were actually cutting fences to get in portable hydrants. We cut fences to get better angles for our apparatus, the tower ladders, to drop down, to get down to roof line on the actual fire building. So we had a lot of stuff going on that you normally don't have at that fire. And even with Jimmy talking about night operations and cold weather ops like they did, I said, I always, when I do my briefing in the morning, and it's not really a briefing, it's having coffee with the guys in the East Side house or the West Side house, just talking to them about what's coming out of the office or whatever. I'll even say, guys, make sure your backpacks or your bags are set. Sweatshirts. Sometimes guys bring extra socks, but if your boots are soaked, extra socks are just going to soak that right back up and your toes are going to freeze. We've actually done the bags from the grocery store. Slide them, put your foot in that, put the dry socks on, put your bags on your feet, and you put them right back into your bunker pants, your bunker boots.
Right.
That's one of those little tricks. But again, even using the exhaust from the apparatus if we're breaking down couplings that are freezing up. So the second we would break down hoses, it would instantly freeze on the ground. So we had our DPW there with salt spreaders as well as the big trucks to drop down calcium chloride or rock salt. So we could, when we started to demobilize, we were able to break hoses, get some guys out, and not have everything freeze right up. It was cold. Like I said, 13 degrees with probably the wind, and Jimmy's right. It's probably below zero with some of those wind gusts. But again, that wind was a lifesaver for us and our city, because if it caught that big building, I don't know if I got plans for that. That's definitely deep in my book. And, the chief of the department was probably way ahead of that, thinking about what's going on if we had that, but we didn't have to get to that point.
Thank goodness for that.
Exactly.
Steve, it's a credit to all of our operators too, our driver operators. We keep probably every apparatus has at least 1 5-gallon pail of either rock salt or sand on the rig for operations like this to prevent slips and falls. And like the chief said, we had one injury that night on the fire ground. One of the firefighters got an injury above his eye that required stitches, but slips and falls were kept as a minimum. And that's really a credit to everybody from our guys to the DPW. Did a great job of preventing any further injuries.
And, that says a lot, that all communities should bear in mind that, that we community departments can work together in so many ways. And it doesn't just have to be in emergencies. We're talking about, the big problem we're facing now, of course, it's more distracted drivers on highways, and whether it's an interstate or it's a 2-lane county highway, makes no difference. When we're responding to those emergencies, we're unfortunately losing first responders at a terrible rate. And a lot of these are at night, occur at night. And the communities, one of the things that we've seen is that some communities are working, some of the fire departments are working with their DPWs for blocking trucks. And instead of sending a truck out for salvage, they spend about $1,200 for some lights and a couple of signs, and that big truck is out there with an attenuator attached to the back and protecting them. And what you got two were talking about, I think, is so positive, because it shows the great relationship that the community departments have to work with each other. And that, yes, everybody has their little fiefdom, but the fact is that when the brown stuff hits the rotating air device, that you guys, everybody can come together, work together for the betterment of the community and for the safety of the community. And that's what we're all there for. That's what it boils down to.
You're absolutely right. At that fire, there were no egos. Everybody knew who they were reporting to. You know, the incident management system worked. Everybody knew who their boss was and their boss's boss, and everybody went up and down the chain. You know, early on, I got to give Jimmy credit. If we didn't have the water, we would have lost that. We would have lost that other building. The way the fire was marching right through that, the 3-story mill building, the original fire building, it was on a roll. It started lighting up the 3rd floor, dropping to the 2nd, dropping to the 1st. We forced entry in the rear just to do a quick primary. That was a nice part about knowing that we had a forced entry, so it wasn't an open door, that we knew that nobody was really in there. The truck company, Ladder 2, made quick entry, did a quick search, and there was nothing, and we got right back out. But again, if we didn't have the water water supply that Jimmy had set up, it would have been worse. It would have been a lot worse. And I'm glad and happy and relieved that we were able to get the apparatus into position. And that's one of the biggest things. Anytime there's a water flow, you know, you're going to be doing relay pumping. You got to look at how the lines are laid out. If you're doing S's in the streets with your hose, your supply line, you're not getting things in. And we were actually rotating towards the morning. I'm going to jump towards about 7 o'clock in the morning. We started to bring in mutual aid apparatus, bringing in 2-in-1, bringing 2 engines in and a new tower into the Canal Street side, because we already broke down Route 21. Route 21 was pretty much packed up and operational again once they salt and sanded. And we were just hitting hot spots from the Canal Street side. We were rotating tower ladders in on a 5-hour operational period. So the way we were able to shut water down, get it off to the side, get the apparatus out, bring the new tower in, set them up, and have new feeders come into them, it just worked seamlessly. And that starts from the beginning. You know, the adage of as goes the first line, so goes the fire was very true, especially in the master stream operations when we were flowing tons of water per minute. And going back to that, we said just before the break, they called for the Neptune system, which is a giant pump system that is based out of the Urban Area Security Initiative that started post 9/11 with, I believe it's 9 counties within the state of New Jersey. And this massive pump feeds 12-inch hose, which goes to a giant Ironman nozzle. But we got the Ironman's little brother. I think it was the Terminator. And but that's fed with that's fed with 2 5-inch lines. And that came up from either Elizabeth or Bayonne or Perth-Amboy area, the IMTT down by the refineries. And that came up, and they put that into play up on Route 21, which was great because we needed the water and we needed the firepower. We just had so much fire, and basically we cut it. We kept the line in the sand. Our guys dug in deep. Every firefighter busted their butt at that fire to accomplish the mission. And the mission was, we're not giving up this other building. We're not giving up the A exposure. Because if that happens, we're going to put a ton of chlorine down the river. There's going to be an environmental impact. People are going to have to be evacuated. You know, like I said, 100,000 people in 3.2 square miles. We're stacked and backed. We have a ton of people in our city. We have people living in attics. We have people living in basements. Some legal, some illegal. And that just adds to whatever we've got. We just had a fire on, I think it was last Wednesday, where we had 7 apartments and 38 people were displaced out of 7 apartments. Again, we had major rescues going on. I've never seen so many people on the fire escape on the third floor, the second floor, and the drop ladder as I did when we pulled up. And again, I got to give it to our mutual aid. They did a remarkable job. They knew who to report to, how to get things done, calling over the radio. And one of the problems on our any major incident is communications. Trying to reach out to the outlying mutual aid coming in, and that's our coordinators did an amazing job. Chief of the department did great. Our training and communications officers were there to assist with whatever we needed. And they actually, I believe, started the Route 21 operation after the state police shut the highway down. And our cops are amazing too. I'm just going to brag on them. Anytime we're up on 21, our cops will shut that highway down no matter what. And it's a testament to them as how safe we can operate on the highway. Yes, you're always going to have errant drivers. We had that. A chief in Patterson years ago got struck while he was operating on 21 by a drunk driver, and he lost part of his leg. We've had it hit home recently with the police officer fatality in Charlotte. Her father was on the job with us.
Oh, wow.
Tony Fig. Tony, his daughter passed away that night down there, and our guys, we sent a contingent and everything else. And it hits home, and we talk about that. That's why we do send the battalion up onto the highway as an additional blocker, as additional safety. I'd love for us to get one of our spare engines, drain it of water, and use that as call it blocker one. But I don't know if we'll ever be able to get that. But it'd just be a really smart move to protect our in-service apparatus with a outdated piece that no longer serves its original function.
Right. Well, the problem that we're all going through across the country, and we're talking about fire, law enforcement, EMS, our road rangers and recovery operators are all being lost to what we're calling the D drivers. And, we just saw it again over the weekend. And, there aren't any more excuses. We had the webinar a couple of weeks ago, and we talked, it was all about having to respond to emergencies and the safety and maintaining situational awareness, especially when you're on roadways. We had Dr. Rich Gasaway was our leadoff speaker. And we addressed that because no matter how much you get into the call, and we do, we focus, we get on these calls and we focus on the call, but we sometimes lose focus of what's around us. And other than our people, we think because we see our people, we're okay. But we today, because of these D drivers, drunk, drowsy, distracted, etc., there are lots of Ds that we can use. We now have to be almost like have our head on a 360 swivel, because you just don't know what's going to happen. We've seen it happen from the moment someone steps off a rig to doing cleanup. We're all finished doing the pickup. And again, somebody doesn't see it. We know that there are companies out there, the manufacturers the big manufacturers of the emergency lights have been working on it. We have the new company that just came in to help sponsor the webinar, HasAlert, which works through the Waze GPS system right now, and it's expanding. And their goal is to, no matter what GPS system you have, it will pick up a signal from emergency services in that area to warn you on your infotainment system, fire, emergency vehicles ahead, please slow down, please move left, etc. Now we're a little time away from that, but the people at HasAlert really are dedicated to raising the level of safety, both for drivers and for first responders. And in an operation like this with that highway, it's wonderful that you have this great relationship with law enforcement in your community who are there for you, knowing that you need protection and they're going to do everything they can to let you guys operate safely when you're on a highway incident. And that's terrific.
Yeah, and that was key for getting water on that fire, on that, we'll call it the D side. We had to have water there, because without that, it was just going to sneak around and get to the A exposure. And with the way they put the tower ladders into operation and the placement, again, it's a hazmat. So what are we dealing with? Uphill, upwind. We talk about that and preach about it all the time. And those guys were in a area, but more of the, that they try to protect themselves as best as possible and stay out of the smoke and whatever byproducts there are from that, from the original fire building. But where they set up and the way our police and state police and DOT worked together was amazing. I'd love to have the numbers of actual manpower of who showed, how many showed, and for how long. I think we operated with mutual aid for the first, 24 hours, and then we broke it down and we had a fire watch with our quick response vehicle, our QRV. We got a pre-piped 2 5-inch feeds to 2 deck guns, and we just had the hydrant flowing to it, and we were just lobbing water. One of the nice parts was we worked with the owners of that building, and they were able to get some demolition equipment in and started to pull apart the walls at some of the spots that were deep seated. A couple of concerns during the fire. They had several chimneys, and I'm talking 4 or 5 stories up. That used to be for the incinerators. Jimmy, you want to talk on that?
So yeah, the chimneys are actually on the Delta side near the Route 21 elevated overpass that goes through that location. But yeah, at the former manufacturing site, there were several chimneys that became a collapse hazard. In fact, the one that was towards the A exposure actually started to lean. We got reports of that chimney leaning, so we made sure to keep all personnel out of there. We placed unmanned master streams on the ground in those areas to protect. And Steve, we didn't even talk about it, and it's a credit again to the chief and to the incident management system, but I actually transmitted 2 urgents earlier on in that fire because the business owner arrived on scene and reported a large diesel fuel tank on the Charlie side of the fire building. And on the AB corner, he reported numerous propane cylinders in the building that were used for forklift operations. And the guys, I got to tell you, the guys from Engine 4, East Rutherford Tower Ladder, the Wallington engine, they really dug in and protected that corner of the building to ensure that we didn't have any problems where that, really took off and affected those propane cylinders.
Yeah, that every time you hear about propane, we remember our 6 brothers from Buffalo in the 80s who I was living in Livingston when that fire occurred, and in that house, and they didn't realize that there was a one of the long horizontal tanks behind that house, and it levied, and unfortunately they were lost, and may the memories always be for a blessing. But the fact that you had teams able to focus on that danger and give you the water stream there and keep them cool and make sure they didn't get heated up. Again, just perfect placement at a perfect time.
It was a Herculean effort, and everybody, like I said, they just did what they had to do to get the job done and keep everybody safe. It was an amazing event that occurred, and again, one minor injury, no slip, trip, or fall injuries that we got reported to, because obviously the people were slipping around because there was ice everywhere. Yeah. But it's a testament to the officers. It's a testament to their senior men. It's a testament to all their operators and firefighters operating at that incident to take a step back, slow down, see what we have, and get the job done. John Dixon's got a term, tactical patience. And I like using that. Our guys were tactically patient. We knew what we had to set up. We had to get it done right the first time because there's no do-overs. And, again, I praise our guys. Artur did an amazing job. Any of the mutual aid that came in on that 2nd, 3rd, 4th alarms that were initially in that slugfest, and any additional alarms that came in for water supply or the highway operation, it was just amazing. The chief of the department did a great job with what he does. He was able to orchestrate and dealing with me at the operations side of on the Canal Street, dealing with Route 21, their area, and dealing with Market Street going into Wallington to get water over the Market Street Bridge. It was a testament to guys trusting each other. A lot of times, a lot of stuff was face to face instead of over the radio, which worked. Sometimes it was over the radio, sometimes it was over the phone, but it got done. And I can't be more proud of my tour and all the guys that came in to assist.
Let me ask you this: one of the things we often hear about in these multi-alarm and multi-aid mutual aid events is that there's difficulty in communication on the radio. Did you find that a problem, or were you able to do you have an interagency system that allowed you to switch, or at least one, like the IC was able to, the command center was able to speak on another agency's frequencies?
So I'll just talk real quick on the IC aspect, and I know Jimmy's can talk about this as well. So we did a unified command. So the agency chiefs are coming in. Everybody came to the command post. Hey, we need this. Hey, we need this. Plus our mutual aid coordinators, we call them MACs. Our county MACs are there. And hey, we need this, this, and this. I think I told Jimmy twice, get it done. Captain, get it done. And I didn't have to check up on him. I didn't have to, hey, how's it coming? Hey, I asked, I think one time, you need anything else? And it went that way. Jimmy has a great working relationship with a lot of the firefighters, the volunteers and career from Bergen and Passaic County. So Jimmy did a lot of face-to-face stuff.
Yeah, Steve, early on in the incident, I came across the Passaic County Mutual Aid Coordinator, and I basically told him, stay on my hip. I'm going to need you for radio communications. And he was able to communicate with most of the responding units via his portable and transfer whatever radio message I needed to the incoming units. Additionally, the Bergen County coordinator showed up, and I have a great working relationship with them. I worked with him a number of years at the Bergen County Fire Academy. And the OEM personnel from Bergen County that showed up, one of them being from Garfield. So I was able to talk face-to-face and request and get things that we needed, get a jump on it. So it worked out. It was an overall, like the chief said, great effort.
Well, another thing I want to bring up is that if people don't know, that New Jersey, while it has municipalities that have full career departments, a lot of departments in New Jersey are either volunteer or combo departments. So I would imagine with 11 alarms, you had a lot of volunteers coming in to bring their equipment and help out there. And the fact that it went so smoothly is, again, a great showing and a great example that, professionalism is what you do as a firefighter. It's not whether you're paid for it or you're a volunteer or you're paid on call, whatever. You do it because this is what you want to do. And this shows that even on a major event like this, we can have career and volunteers working together with the same goal in mind. Number one, safety for everybody. And number two, be as safe as we can and get the job done for the incident that we're facing. And I think that's important for us to stress as well.
Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off.
Go ahead, Chief. No.
It's almost a year ago. It's a little over a year ago that we had a large fire on 7th Street. We had a plastic and paper recycling facility that bundled paper and plastics, and we had 10 alarm cap.
Yeah, I think it went to 8 alarm fire.
So we do tend to get some away games for a lot of the mutual aid that comes in. And you know what? Everybody worked well there. Again, cold weather operations. I guess within the first 24 to 48 hours, we had a blizzard roll through, and it was just crazy. But again, that was another couple acre facility that had issues, and we've had previous fires and they're small ones that we were able to get. But again, it's a testament to everybody working together. When I teach at the academy, I talk to firefighters, and I teach I said, listen, there's no 912. It's 911. You're the professionals, whether you're paid or you're volunteer or your combination, paid on call, whatever it is. You're the professional that's responding to your incident. Nobody else is coming to take your job. You're the professionals. That's why you got to know your job to keep yourself safe and everybody else.
Very true. Very true. This has been amazing. I'm going to try, folks, and I'm not making any promise. I'm going to try to pick up some available video and actually put that into the video that we're going to put on YouTube. And maybe see if I can pick up some of the radio traffic from the link that Chief Billy provided last week on the Firefighter Close Call email. I'm so glad you were able to take the time, both of you, today to share this with us, because, I could almost guarantee, I'd put money on the fact that almost every firefighter in this country watched at some point, whether it's online or live on the news, whatever, this fire, saw parts of it and saying, oh, I wonder what's going on. I wonder what we would do, or I'd like to be on that one, or something like that. The fact is that this was a huge fire in this country. And while in general, we see that fires are going down in number, we also know that the intensity has changed. We know that our time to get from incipient to outright full stage has shortened from when we used to have 7-8 minutes. We're lucky if we get 4 minutes now because of the product that's burning. Now that's in a room and contents fire. Now you transfer it to a building almost 2 acres in size, producing chlorine and lots of plastics if they're doing pooled supplies. So loaded with plastics on top of that. This is, just an amazing challenge that the city of Passaic faced, and yet came together with its neighbors, its mutual aid, and did one hell of a job over a lot of time to knock it down and make it safe again in the community. And that's testament to the leadership from the two of you, from the chief of department, from your county coordinators, which is a great idea to have. And I think it was brilliant how you used them. I mean, just with that unified command, which again, sometimes Chief Billy put out last week, I think it was one of the close calls, talking about the squabbling. Oh, I don't like that guy and that thing. He cheated me on a poker game, and I'm never going to call him to whatever. I mean, it can't be about personalities and egos, as you mentioned, Chief. It has to be about the job we do and the people we take care of, because that's the oath we took to save and protect lives and property in our communities. It didn't say, if you get along with that guy, you can go help him out. It didn't say, well, you might not like that guy, so don't bring him in. It's our job. And if you're a leader, and we're always talking about leadership, right? If you're a leader, then you have to show the people that you lead the right way of doing this job. And it doesn't make any difference if they're a red county or a blue county or a yellow or green county. The fact is, you need help or they need help, and we have to help each other, because that's what we do, and it's who we are. If we're out there to take care of the citizens, we damn well better be taking care of business at home too, in our own departments. And that's the key. And that again goes to the leadership. And two of you today, and plus the chief of department, have shown what great leadership can do, even under a possibly disastrous situation, and basically prevent it from happening, because you didn't get that fire never made it to that chlorine base, and thank goodness for that. So
Absolutely.
So Cap, I know you got to run. You have a 12 o'clock appointment. So again, our thanks for your time, Chief. Always great to see you. As I told you in an email, we're hoping maybe if things calm down enough health-wise, to take our annual summer ride up 95.
Nice.
And
let me know when you're up.
Yep, we'll be doing that, because we want to get to see all our friends along the East Coast that we've made thanks to the podcast. So again, our thanks to Battalion Chief John Hayowyk and Captain James Kovacs for their inside look at this 11-alarm chemical fire just 2 weeks ago in Passaic, New Jersey. If you're watching the video, this will be the end of the video. If you're listening to the audio podcast, we're going to be right back right after these words. So for those of you on the video, thank you for tuning in. We appreciate it. We'll be back very soon with another episode of 5-Alarm Task Force. Until then, stay safe and stay well. And just take care of each other. Thanks very much, folks. We'll see you soon.